following program contains scenes that may disturb some viewers because we're about to enter the world of the truly disgusting. We're counting down the top 10 grossest behaviors in the animal kingdom and comparing them to hideous human habits. It's not for the faint-hearted, but there's heaps of hilarity ahead when gross outs are taken to the most extreme.
Earth is a planet of extremes. Extreme places. And extreme animals. But some animals are more extreme than others. Join us as we count down to find the most unusual and the most extraordinary on Animal Planet's The Most Extreme. Number 10.
Kicking off our countdown is an animal that towers over all other contenders. It's the giraffe. It may look elegant as it strides serenely across the plains of Africa, but it has a messy secret. The giraffe has long legs, a long neck, and long lines of slimy, sticky spit. Giraffes drool a lot. Not many people get to see these dribbly giants in action because their heads are usually up in the trees, and that's where they roll out another gross surprise. A giraffe's tongue can be up to 18 inches long and is so powerful that it can rip leaves from branches. All that sticky saliva coats the serrated leaves and spines, making them easier to swallow. At the end of the meal, giraffes have a very unpleasant way of wiping their faces. Giraffes are number 10 in the countdown because they can clean almost any orifice with their tongue. Imagine what you could do with a tongue like a giraffe. With an 18-inch tongue, you could wipe your forehead and clean out your nose. You could even explore inside your ears, which would be really handy if you've got lots of earwax. About 2,000 tiny glands inside the ear produce the waxy matrix, but it's also mixed up with things like dead skin cells, bacteria, and fragments of hair. Because we don't have a tongue like a giraffe, earwax buildup can be a real problem. And since you should never put anything in your ear smaller than your elbow, it's a job best left to a professional. Like the one at this small clinic in Osaka, Japan. Not only does the doctor clean your ears, but courtesy of a fibroscope, you can watch while he works. Although some people may find it a little disturbing getting up close and personal with your own earwax. It's a delicate procedure, even for a professional, so never try this at home. Giraffes may have no trouble with earwax, but other things can really get up their nose. Ants can be found living in the swollen bases of the thorns of some African trees. In return for their prickly homes, the swarms of ants will defend the tree against all hungry herbivores. Get too close and angry ants will enter every opening. Luckily, the giraffe's tongue can remove all invaders. The giraffe's personal hygiene may be a little offensive, but it's nothing compared to the disgusting digestion of our next contender.
Number 9.
In this English garden is a man with a truly gross talent under his belt. Meet Paul Hunn from London. Paul has one of the loudest burps in the world, with a personal best of an ear-shattering 118 decibels. His belches are as loud as an aircraft taking off.
So,
But Paul's gift of the gas is nothing compared to our next contender. The cow has propelled itself into number 9 in the countdown thanks to the breathtaking amount of gas it pumps out. Cows have a real problem with wind. They have to burp almost constantly to relieve all the methane that builds up in their stomachs. These bovine belchers can expel as much as half a gallon of gas every minute. Every year, the estimated 100 million cattle in the U.S. release about 50 million tons of gases into the atmosphere, and not just from the front. The main reason for their galloping gas is because they eat so much, up to 90 pounds of food a day. If we ate like cows, we'd probably have extreme gas as well, especially if we ate 90 pounds of baked beans. Beans are perhaps the ultimate in gas-producing food, thanks to their high sulfur content. We all know about the gross-smelling after effects of a big bean blowout, but they're not the only ingredient that can create a sulfurous stench. If you want to clear a room, other foods that will help to really cut the cheese include cabbage, broccoli, and onions. Every day, the average person releases around 10 messages from the interior, which is about 3.5 pints of gas. Imagine if you could collect all that wind from, say, the entire population of Rhode Island. It would be enough gas to fill a hot air balloon, which is nothing to sniff at. Although it would only take 400 stinky cows to do the same job. That's because these bovine blowhards are always ready to rumble.
may be a real gas, and giraffes are picky. But the next contender's bad behavior will have you running for cover. And later, we'll reveal something so revolting that it could make you lose your lunch. That's next on Animal Planet's The Most. Number 8.
Mud is gross. It's sloppy, sticky, and stinky. It can make the cleanest competitors fight dirty. But coming in at number 8 in our countdown of most extreme gross-outs is an animal that really gets down and dirty. Welcome to the muddy, malodorous world of the hippopotamus. It may look gross, but imagine if you had almost no hair, sensitive skin, and lived under the baking African sun. You'd be heading straight for the sunscreen, and for the hippo, that means mud. Lots of mud. But there's a special X factor in the hippo's muddy sunscreen. It's number 8 in the countdown, because if you hang out with hippos, you're guaranteed a gross encounter of the turd kind. A hippo lets loose a gross mix of urine and feces by twirling its tail like a propeller. The noxious green spray is used to humiliate hippo rivals and to mark their territory. But they're not the only ones taking revenge with dung. Adele Jones from Brisbane, Australia is a florist who's found a novel use for dung. For those in love, she'll send flowers. For those seeking revenge, she collects, packages, and ships gift-wrapped dung. The success of Adele's bizarre mail-order business is no flash in the pan.
Every Australian's dream is to make money out of poo, and that's what we're doing.
Dispatching dung is all in a day's work for a hippo, and there's no extra charge for airmail. But not everyone finds it gross. When the hippos have finished delivering their pungent packages, it's dinner time for a peckish baboon. But if you think that meal is gross, just wait till you see what's being served up next in the countdown.
We've seen vile sunblock and stinky livestock. But just ahead is a youngster with a real potty mouth. And we'll discover an animal that has a truly nauseating way of bringing home the bacon. That's coming up on Animal Planet's The Most Exciting. Number 7.
Our countdown of extreme gross-outs continues in the parched wastelands of northern India. In this desolate place, the golden jackal sneaks into number 7 in the countdown because it survives on a truly vile diet. Jackals are scavengers, which is why even this putrid carcass is worth fighting for. Jackals survive by eating the dead and diseased, even if it's been rotting for days under the hot sun. But if you think that's sick, just wait till you see the way they bring up their kids. Jackals are number 7 in the countdown because they have a truly repulsive way of putting dinner on the table. Every 3 hours, Mom and Dad throw up. We may think a meal of pre-digested buffalo is gross, but for young pups, it's all that stands between them and starvation. And like mothers everywhere, when the kids have finished eating, Mom gets to finish what's left on the plate. Throwing up may be gross, but some people have tossed their cookies in the name of science. These pilots are taking part in an experiment to test the body's ability to cope with motion sickness. Inside a revolving chamber, everything looks normal until you see the weird things happening to gravity. You feel motion sickness when information collected by the balance center in your inner ear tells your brain that you're moving, and yet your eyes are telling you that you're still. This sensory conflict produces all the classic symptoms of motion sickness. First, you go pale and clammy, then you break out in a cold sweat, and when it all gets too much, you hurl. Barf bags are something that most people hope they never have to reach for. But a man from Fort Worth, Texas grabs one every chance he gets. Ben Guttery has an extremely unusual collection.
I am the largest collector of barf bags in the U.S. The next largest collection is probably at the Smithsonian. They have a few hundred bags.
Ben has over 1,100 barf bags from airlines all over the world. But not one of the bags has been used, so they're of no interest to jackals. A paper sack full of vomit would be their ideal doggy bag. Feeding your kids on regurgitated rubbish may seem like a nasty eating habit, but coming up next is an animal with a truly revolting drinking problem.
Number 6.
The hills of southern India are some of the wettest places on the planet. During the monsoon season, they get drenched by more than 20 feet of rain. But there's one animal that likes showers. The tar is a rare mountain goat. It's nosed its way into number 6 in the countdown thanks to a liquid lunch that's really horrendous. During the mating season, there's one surefire way for a male to assess if a female will be receptive to his amorous advances. Tar play a gross game of tag. Instead of saying you're it, tar prefer to say you're in. But tar aren't the only ones to have taken a wee drink. Back in Roman times, mouthwash and toothpaste were actually made from urine. Back then, pee was the toast of the town. But it turns out the Romans were onto a good thing, because stored urine contains ammonia, and ammonia molecules are natural cleansers. In fact, ammonia is still an ingredient in many dental hygiene products. Only these days it's made in the laboratory, not the lavatory. Tar have known for a long time that there's nothing like a little tinkle to make your teeth twinkle. That's because when tar take a drink, it really is bottoms up.
If you've been grossed out by the tar's dirty drinking and the jackal's filthy feeding, then you just won't believe what baby koalas have for dinner. Plus, you'll discover why you wouldn't want a sea cucumber in your salad. It's Bon Appetit, next on Animal Planet's The Most Extreme.
After all, the koala sleeps for 22 hours every day. If they only knew the disgusting truth. The koala is number 5 in our countdown of extreme gross-outs because it's actually a foul-mouthed furball. That's because this marsupial teddy bear only eats the leaves of eucalyptus trees, which are packed with protective poisons. It takes a digestive system full of special bacteria to detoxify the leaves. The trouble is that koala babies are born without the bacteria, so mom has to pass the bugs on. Which is why she whips up a tasty treat of bacteria-filled droppings. That green paste is actually poo. Koalas really do have a potty mouth and would rather lick the bowl than flush it. Toilets and what happens in them are so gross that most people prefer to keep them behind closed doors. But that wasn't always the case. In Scotland in the 18th century, there was such a shortage of public conveniences that toilets would come to you. If in need, you just had to look for a man armed with a large cloak and a big bucket. For a little money, you could use the bucket and get a little privacy. But you wouldn't have had any toilet paper. This modern convenience appeared little more than 100 years ago, and it took some time before manufacturers would guarantee that it was splinter-free. So today, we should think ourselves lucky that answering the call of nature has become such a private, pleasurable experience. Perhaps that's why a recent survey showed that every year, Americans spend a total of 2 weeks in the smallest room in the house. To pass the time while sitting on the throne, 33% of people use the telephone, 47% are happy to just contemplate the future, and more than half of those surveyed retreat there to read in peace. Luckily, only baby koalas seem to want to eat their meals in the toilet. While we may poo-poo the koala's gross diet, it's still no match for the bottom feeder coming up next in the countdown.
Number 4.
The oceans are home to some breathtakingly beautiful sights. Unfortunately, the animal at number 4 in the countdown isn't one of them. To track it down, just follow the yellow bricks on the road. Eventually, you'll come face to rear with the sea cucumber. Believe it or not, this shapeless squidgy sausage is actually related to the starfish, yet it looks more like something nasty you'd wipe off the bottom of your shoe. And strangely enough, that's pretty much what it feeds on. Sea cucumbers are the vacuum cleaners of the sea. They'll dine on the most ghastly sludge, picking up everything from droppings to dead bodies. A single sea cucumber can process more than 300 pounds of sediment a year. That makes an awful lot of poop. While most of us find defecation disgusting, for some people it holds a strange fascination. The streets of Manhattan are the last place you'd expect to find a sea cucumber, or something that looks like one. But things aren't always what they seem, especially at Abracadabra. This New York novelty store specializes in the unexpectedly gross, as salesperson Tony Williams explains.
Here at the Abracadabra Gag Shop, we have a lot of different things. We have a lot of different gross things. Believe it or not, people come in to see, but not to see, to buy. Dog do here at Abracadabra is very popular. There's a lot of dogs in New York. Then we have the vomit. We have vomit in different styles: liquid, chunky, non-chunky, giant vomit. It's kind of gross. This also could be substituted for boogers. Just cut it. Then we have slime, which is always good. Has maggots in it, good for soup or gravy on the mashed potatoes. If anything, as time goes on, things get more disgusting. The one thing people want is more realistic things. It seems to be getting grosser. I mean, people want, well, I want it more realistic. It can't look fake.
But no joke shop has a gag that can match the sea cucumber, because this animal breathes through its rear. It sucks water in, and oxygen is absorbed into the walls lining the anus. It's a ticklish subject for a sea cucumber, but it's one sure way to tell which end is which.
If you were impressed by the nauseating habits of sea cucumbers and koalas, you'll be overwhelmed by the animal that's the biggest slime ball in the sea. And if that's not grosser than gross, then get a load of an animal with a seriously stinky way of keeping cool. That's next on Animal Planet's The Most Extreme. Number 3.
Our countdown of the most extreme gross-outs sinks to new depths as we travel down to where the dead things go. Death and decay attract the animal that's number 3 in the countdown. The hagfish is one of the most repulsive creatures in the ocean. It's nearly blind, so it finds food with a highly developed sense of smell and touch. It feeds on dead or dying animals by entering any available opening and eating them from the inside out. You don't have to worry about hagfish biting you, for the simple reason that they have no jaws or teeth. Instead, they have rasps. They use their tongue to pull food into the mouth, and the rasps pinch together to grind up the flesh. But it's not the hagfish's distasteful dining habits that make it gross. It's number 3 in the countdown because it has a disgusting defense mechanism. Annoy a hagfish, and it will immediately turn seawater into a gallon of goop. It's like a slimy vest that protects the hagfish from attack, clogging the gills of would-be predators. The 150 slime glands dotted along the hagfish's body need only minutes to produce up to 17 pints of mucus that's laced with thin yet strong fibers. But hagfish aren't the only things that produce a lot of mucus. Take a look inside the human nose, and you'll discover it's Slime City. That's because mucus acts as a barrier against germs, dust, and other noxious substances carried into the nose every time we breathe. The blanket of slime collects the gunk, then millions of tiny hairs move the mucus out of the nasal passages. And there's a lot of mucus to move. The healthy human nasal system can produce up to 2 pints of snot a day. That means each year, you produce enough mucus to fill 5 bathtubs, more than 90 gallons of mucus. Luckily, you don't get to see most of it because you swallow it down the back of your throat. Hagfish mucus is so hard to swallow that it's no wonder divers avoid getting slimed. But get too close to our next contender, and you risk being covered not in goo, but in poo.
Number 2.
America produces over 500,000 tons of garbage every day. It's repulsive, reeking, and rancid. But for number 2 in the countdown, it's a sign that dinner is served. Vultures are psychic scavengers. They see dead things and eat them. They love nothing more than chowing down on a juicy piece of something really gross. And the more rotten it is, the better. These flying garbage disposal units will travel miles for a good takeout. With weak claws and beaks, vultures must gain entry to the carcass by piercing the softest parts first. It takes guts to eat like a vulture. Eating rotting flesh can be a killer, but the vulture's stomach acids are so strong they can destroy even the deadliest bacteria. But the fun doesn't stop there. After a savory meal, vultures have a most unsavory habit. Because they don't have any sweat glands, when it gets too hot, they let their waste run down their legs. It sounds nasty to us, but as the dribbly doo-doo evaporates, it acts like a stinky cooling fluid for the blood vessels in the skin of their feet. These birds are so unbelievably gross. It's hard to believe that there are human vultures among us. Meet John Stars Jr. from Tampa, Florida. John has an unusual hobby. one that some people would consider to be the grossest hobby in the world. John is a dumpster diver. For 30 years, he's been diving in and out of other people's trash. John is a regular on the dumpster circuit, but he's not alone.
A lot of people assume that if you're dumpster diving, you're a down-and-out street person or something, but a surprising number of upper-middle-class people do it. Most people who dumpster dive are simply cheap tightwads like me. Frugal is too polite. Yeah, all my friends agree, I'm cheap.
John finds treasure in other people's trash. Over the years, he's recovered electrical goods, furniture, and even expensive jewelry. More importantly, John believes he's helping the environment.
Dumpster diving, which I also call pre-cycling, is a very important thing that we can do to help the environment by preventing waste and making use of items that otherwise would end up in landfills.
Thanks to John, these food scraps will never get to a landfill because he's taking them home to feed his hungry family of chickens.
Come on, Buffy. Come on, Vader. Come on, Edith. Come on, Rocco. Come on. Get your big num-nums. Come here, girls. Come here, girls. Look at Dad's gut. Eat your big nummies. Come on, get your big num-nums. Get your noodles. There you go. Dad gets you big num-nums. That's right. You're the luckiest chickens in the world. How many chickens get such good nummies? Get that big noodle.
Vultures have no trouble finding num-nums. After all, they're nature's very own pre-cyclers. It's a dirty job, but someone has to do it. But if you think vultures are foul, we've saved the ultimate gross out for last.
We've seen the 9 contenders. They're the grossest of the gross. Only one animal is more revolting. It's number 1, and it's coming up next on Animal Planet's The Most. Number 1.
Anywhere there's death or decay, you can be sure that the countdown's grossest animal won't be far away.
Listen. Do you hear? It's coming back, turning the screen into a buzzing, crawling, creeping nightmare of terror.
Screaming into number 1 in the countdown is an animal that dines out on festering food and disgusting droppings: the fly. After feasting on feces, it likes to join us for dinner. And wherever it lands, the fly leaves behind tiny traces of its last meal. Its body is covered in potentially harmful bacteria that can spread diseases like typhoid and dysentery. Its filthy footprints are bad enough, but it's the fly's table manners that are truly sickening. Flies vomit all over our food, hurling enzymes that turn it into a soup. And what they can't suck up, they leave behind for us. It's no wonder we don't like flies. But if you think their eating habits are disgusting, just wait till you see where they put their young. Flies lay their eggs in dead flesh that the maggots eat once they hatch. They can strip a carcass in days. So why would anyone want to take maggots into intensive care? To find out, visit Dr. Ronald Sherman at the University of California.
Maggot lab.
Inside the maggot lab, Ron breeds maggots. Lots of maggots. The process begins in the nursery. Looking more like grains of rice than baby maggots, the eggs are carefully disinfected to kill any bacteria on their bodies. That's because Ron Sherman and his team operate America's only breeding service for medicinal maggots. These are the smallest surgeons in the world. The healing power of the maggot was first noticed back in the American Civil War. Horribly wounded soldiers were often left for days with no medical attention. By the time they received help, many of their wounds were infested with maggots. But to everyone's surprise, their wounds were healing beautifully. Because maggots only eat dead tissue, they had effectively cleaned the wounds out, removing bacteria and stimulating healing. And they're still doing it today. Every week, the Maggot Lab delivers thousands of disinfected maggots all over America. They are used to treat wounds that have not responded to modern antibiotics. But isn't having maggots on your body the ultimate gross out? Not according to Ronald Sherman.
If you ask someone who has no wound, they might think maggots on their body is kind of gross. But when you ask someone who has a draining, stinking hole in their foot, that is more gross than disinfected or sterile maggots.
They may be medical marvels, but most flies just get under our skin. They have a festering reputation as filth-loving bacterial bulimics. And that's why, when it comes to gross-outs, the fly really is the most extreme.
Coming up on Animal Planet,